All right, so I'm Filipe, this is Flavio. We are both from Brazil and we work at Vinta. We are partners there. And we are going to talk to you about Fix My Django. So this started when we used to program in Angular 1. And Angular 1 had this thing where whenever it displayed an error, you could click on the link in the console. And it took you for like a web page where you could see something about the error, how to fix it, what was it. And we thought that was pretty good. So we decided to do it for Django. And that's when we created Fix My Django. And we are going to show you in a live demo now.
Okay. So here is some code that has a bug. Okay, so here is like, hope you can see it. Here I have a view with a template that does not exist. And then on the URLs, I just try to use that view. And when I go to localhost and open that view, it shows that the broken template does not exist. And it says that Fix My Django may have a solution for this exception. When we click it, it goes to Fix My Django website, filtering by the exception type we just saw, by which model it was erased, by which line, and then we can click, and we are able to see more information about the exception, the traceback that generates that exception. This traceback is like sanitized because it doesn't show the environment before the site packages, so it will not show your home directory or something like that. And then show how to reproduce this bug and how to fix it. You should verify if there are any spell errors, if the template name is correct, if the folders are correctly configured on templates, setting, and everything. To install Fix My Django, you just need to pip install Fix My Django and go into the settings and add here to install the apps. And by doing this, we override the full error page for Django development server to be able to have this link that I showed to you. If the section doesn't exist in Fix My Django, you can contribute with it. So for example, here another case where you can add the error to Fix My Django. And when you click it, you see that we already got the exception information that you just saw, and we don't have it. And you can add some information about how to reproduce, and someone else can help you on how to solve this.
All right, so Fix My Django is an open source project. It's on GitHub. If you go to /fixmydjango altogether. And the history of the project is pretty much, we created this 2 years ago. We used it internally at Vinta. But the thing was, we wanted to gather some initial data, so like after that we could publicize it more. That's actually why we couldn't get this out, because we didn't got much engagement, even inside the company. And we think that was pretty much because of the way we are doing stuff. So nowadays we show the link. It would be good to like actually show the full resolution in the Django error page. So next steps will be, we got a couple bugs. We kind of stopped working on this a few time ago. So we do have bugs. We need to add support for, maybe there's some bugs on Python 3 and Django, the latest versions. So yeah, we need to display how to fix the errors inside the error page. We would like to have, so you could like submit have that form for submitting errors inside the Django error page as well. And it would be good to have ticketing so like anyone could contribute. So we will be here for sprints, and we would like to work on this. And so if you want to help us out, just talk to us. Thank you. Do we have time? All right, so we got a few seconds. What is it? 8. Oh, shit.
You closed it.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so as I said, we are from Brazil, and we have a PyCon there. It's called Python Brazil, and it's going to happen from the 6th to the 11th of October. So if you want to come, please let me know. I can help you out with anything. Unfortunately, the talks are all in Portuguese, so you might find might have some trouble, but you are welcome. All right, thank you.
Filipe.
All right. Yeah, so the Zen of Django is a little package I put together. Let's see here. So just a little bit about me first. I'm an instructor at a boot camp in Houston called Digital Crafts. I'm also using Django to build a Google Assistant voice app, so if anyone wants to talk about that, come see me after the talk. If you said those little words, probably 80% of you on your phone actually would bring it up and follow me on Twitter. I'm the Pizza Panther. So what is the Zen of Django? It's just some tools I put together to streamline and get you started with Django a little bit easier. So I have a little bit of flexibility with the curriculum I teach. So, I'm a Django guy. I wanted to teach my boot campers some Django. So I probably, part of it was my fault. I went through it too fast. But, I started seeing some of the pain points of getting newcomers to start Django. Some of the pain points I found, right, you need regex and URLs. That's not necessarily like an easy thing for a newcomer coming to programming. And some of the stuff too, right, is just with developing Python. It's not necessarily a Django thing. So you got to worry about package management. You got to worry about not committing your secret key. Even I've done this after like 10 years of development. Thankfully, there's that guy who like follows all the public projects and makes sure you don't commit that secret key. I got that email, so thank you, whoever that is. There's no like built-in production server. Static files, you got to worry about how you're going to deploy that, and then switching from your production to your development settings. So I created this little package called the Zen of Django to kind of put this all together, make it easier to start out so that you don't have to necessarily worry about some of these things. So the first thing, simplified URLs. So instead of using regex, I stole like the Flash style, and basically you can mix and match between the Zen URL and the Django URL. It's actually just converting it to regex for you, but I think that's a lot easier to understand. I grew up on Perl, and I eat regex for breakfast, but I still know that like I don't really want to use regex a lot. So I think this simplifies the URLs a lot. Let's see, the next thing, package management. So you get a requirements.txt, automatically generate it with whatever packages are already there. I've also included pip save, so just like with NPM where you can install a package and then it saves it to your package file or requirements.txt, so that's built in. Auto-generated get ignore. I had people, again, committing their database, their SQLite databases, so just get rid of that problem. .env with your secret key, again, is initialized for you, so you don't have to worry about committing your secrets. And deployment. So I think microWhiskey is pretty much the preferred method, so I built that in from the Django microWhiskey package. White noise for static files, that's all built in, and then the project template is automatically set up to switch between your development settings and your production settings. And you can see down here at the bottom, I put in a dev server so you kind of know what you're running. That's just actually an alias to run server. And then when you want to switch to production, you just run the prod server, which will run Django microWhiskey for you. All right, so let's see if I can have a demo fail here. So I'm going to go through it here. So we'll do a Python virtual env here. And do I get time for like network calls here that are slow? Nope. All right, so I made my virtual environment. Now I'm going to do pip install djzen and get that installed. You can see it's installing a bunch of stuff for me. And let's see if I can get to the final thing. So you can just start your project instead of using the Django start project. And it kind of asks you some recommended settings, and I guess I shouldn't use the test. So we'll just use that. And there you go, you got your get ignore, you got your requirements, and then if you can see it here, ding dong, you got your ENVs and your secret key. All right.
Well done, Paul.
My name is Richard Latimer, creator of ptrack, along with Sarah Ellis from Indeed. So this is a tracking pixel library. What is a tracking pixel? It's a image tag, typically 1 by 1 pixel, transparent, and there's a unique URL that's associated with that. Here, this is kind of the two typical flows. You have this small image that loads on an email or a web page. When it's loaded, when the user visits or opens the email, you then execute a logging function and you log that this user visited the page. So this is really useful because we like to track email open rates. You can log that data, and then you can see click-through rates. So then if you have your own tracking pixels, you could do A/B testing. So I could try one subject line versus another subject line, split it among my users, see who's opening more of those emails. With the goals of ptrack, looked at various different ways people are doing tracking pixels, and tried to do it the Django way with the best of those ideas. So one, there's no database. The data is based, we put it inside of the URL. You have flexibility with the metrics, so you're not based on a unique ID ptrack gives you. You get to decide the metrics. It's secure, so these metrics are encoded and then encrypted into a URL, and then it's fast. When this decryption and decoding phase, it happens in our production settings within 80 milliseconds or lower. So here's what a typical flow would look like for ptrack. So you load the ptrack module, you load the ptrack template tag, you can have arguments. So here we have our test name, email test1, and then maybe you want to find some distinct information about users. So you could pass in the user ID, you could do some distinct email open rates, etc. Then what links that template to your logging is you instantiate a version of a tracking pixel. There's a callback routine called record. You have access to your request, so you can see through that info what mail clients are accessing you or what users are visiting your web page. You can access your arguments, and you can access your key value arguments. And finally, these, say here, custom tracking pixel, you register it with ptrack. You can actually chain these together, so if you want to split up your code, how you do your tracking pixels, it's up to you. There's no guarantee on the order they execute, but you can chain them together. For a few extensions, say you want to do internal email tests, so you want to say, you know, people aren't opening my surveys, I want to do email subject tests, see what people are doing. You actually can do this. So most mail providers proxy your images, so you can't actually just host it from your internal network. What you can do here is you can deploy a mirror version of your site, but you know, just a thin client. So it's merely there for tracking pixels. And you can define your app URL where the tracking pixel would be loaded, and then you share a secret key for encryption and decryption of the metrics. If you don't want to use the encryption scheme that comes with ptrack, we're using PyNACL. You can define your own encoder and use it there instead. And Python 3 support's coming soon. This is the first Django project Indeed has open source, so was pushing to get that up before this, before coming here. So after that, we're working on Python 3 and hoping to contribute more to the community. So here's our GitHub. You can actually pip install using Django-ptrack and want to open if there's any questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Johan Heller. I work for Rover.com, and I'm here to talk about non-locking migrations and Django. So everybody likes dogs, and I like Django, so let's mix the two things together. So we got a dog model, and it just has a name field. We're going to add a birthday field to that, because dogs love receiving birthday cards in the mail. It's a well-known fact. And it has a database call, or database index, so we can make query on it fast. Making a migration in Django is super easy. You just call make migrations. You can pass arguments too if you want more custom, but that works. It will spit out a migration that looks like this. It's actually a really, really handy feature of Django, the migrations subsystem. It keeps track of dependencies. It has all the operations it's going to do. It's database independent, so this is can be run across multiple different database backends. Really handy feature. So then you actually want to run your migration on production, so you run migrate, and Django will take that migration file and make this SQL. This is database dependent, so it will change the SQL slightly. The only difference between Postgres and MySQL here is the quoting, but it's pretty standard SQL, so we're going to go ahead and run that. As we'll give that to MySQL. That's the database system that we use at Rover, and MySQL does this with that. So what happens there is both the alter, adding the column and adding the index lock the table for writes while it's doing that. And if you have a very large table, the table will remain locked for writes for a long time, which means no users can add dogs during that time, which makes for really unhappy users because people love to talk about their dogs and add them to a website. So what can we do about that? So MySQL 5.6 added some features for supporting sort of non-locking operations. And how we take advantage of those is we can just alter the SQL that Django generated for us to add a couple more parameters so that it doesn't lock. Just a quick side note here. Alter table uses commas and create index doesn't. And if you don't get that right, it errors with syntax errors, and it just infuriates me that that's the case. Going back to the actual full SQL here, the things we added are the algorithm in place, which tells MySQL that you want to use the in place sort of upgrade of the table and not a copy operation, which is the sort of other choice. A quick note, it sounds like in place would be faster than copy. It's actually not. It's actually slower and adds more load on your database, but it has the advantage of it doesn't lock things. So you can expect worse performance for the migrations. They'll take longer and they'll be doing more work, but they won't lock. Lock none here is sort of just saying the same thing, like please don't take any locks. It doesn't actually mean no locks. It just means less locks for less time. Because it's MySQL, so it sort of doesn't do what it says. A note here is if you run it like this, and it has to take a lock to do the thing you want it to do, it will just fail. It won't silently downgrade to taking locks, which is actually really handy. All right, so how do we use that with Django? So Django has a run SQL migrations operation. So we can just specify our own. The SQL and reverse SQL are variables that are off the slide. So, but they just are the same things we saw before in the reverse of that. And you specify the state operations so the migration system knows what's going on. And then you're like, oh yeah, awesome. Like this is working really well. And then you realize that this is part of the docs describing all the limitations of this system. So basically every single operation has a different set of limits and restrictions on how it works. I can't fit it on a single slide, even though I can get really, really tiny. The sort of big ones to point out are it requires InnoDB, it requires MySQL 5.6 or later, it requires that your table have been created in MySQL 5.6 or later, or you have done a copy operation on that table, which you also can't, MySQL won't tell you if it's done that. You just have to know based on dates and things. It's pretty annoying. This doesn't exist yet. Well, it exists, like you can go there, but there's nothing there. But this is what I'm planning on sprinting on, which is adding the migrations system to, or adding a database backend that adds these parameters for you. At the end, just a shameless plug, I work for Rover.com, and so if you like Python, Django, or dogs, come talk to me. That's it.
So, hi. Some of you may be worried about starting your first Django application or writing your first bit of code. I'm here to tell you that I have at least one that I've been maintaining for over 10 years, and I'm still worried, but it gets better and you learn a lot of things. So let me tell you a little story. I want to take you back to a simpler time when the world made sense. It was the year 2007. And Django had been out for about a year, and people kept coming up with these cool things that they figured out how to do with Django, and they wanted a way to share it, but Python packaging wasn't that great yet. So I built this website called DjangoSnippets.org, which still exists but is maintained by other people, and was a place that you could share these little bits of code that you'd figured out. But I needed a way to let people sign up for it and have an account there. So I did something silly. I started writing a Django application. This is February of 2007, the initial commit of an application now known as Django registration. This has been around for a while. It was originally Google code and Subversion, then it was Mercurial on Bitbucket, now it's Git on GitHub. Django registration was built on a thing that I was really pushing hard at the time, which is the idea that a Django application should do one thing and do it really well. So in this case, it was just about signing up user accounts, nothing else. Not filling in a profile, not letting them connect other things, just sign up a user account. Unfortunately, there are some things that are hard. So back then, Django did not have class-based views. If you wanted flexible, extensible apps that people could add on functionality to, you had to add a bunch of arguments onto your function-based views. I tried to do default templates. Eventually, I tried to do custom user models, and also I had a dose of real life in the middle of it. So this is the sort of thing you used to have to do with a function-based Django view. You just kept piling in more and more and more keyword arguments there. Some of the worst that I've seen is if you go back and look in the Django repository just before we switched over to class-based generic views, some of them have definitions that look like this because of how many different keyword arguments they had to take for all the functionality that they were supposed to handle. Fortunately, now we have class-based views. Django registration now uses class-based views. This is lesson number 1. If something is painful, look at what Django is doing now and maybe see if you can steer it in a direction that it will get better. In this case, class-based views solved a whole lot of problems. This one I was never able to solve. People really, really like having default templates in an application that they can just plug in and it works. Unfortunately, it's really, really difficult, especially if it's something like, say, user registration, where you don't know in advance even what kind of form they're going to use, what kind of fields it will collect, what kind of workflow it will have. Shipping a single set of templates that work for all of that is just impossible. Eventually, I gave up. Every once in a while, about twice a year, someone still files an issue at GitHub saying, could you please provide default templates? And I say, I would really like to, but unfortunately, I can't. Then Django went and came up with this custom user model thing. Before this, Django registration only had to deal with one user model. And you knew what it looked like. It was django.contrib.auth.models.user. Now, suddenly, anybody can have pretty much any user they want. At first, Django registration just kind of, we're not going to do that. Now, actually, it does support custom user models. That was a bit of work. If you want to go look in the code, you can find lots of places where it does get user model or foreign keys to settings.auth user model. Support got there eventually, although it is still probably kind of buggy. The last 2 bug fix releases I've had to do involved custom users. Here's the real killer. This is 2 views of my GitHub contribution graph. One of them is what you see if you're logged in as me and can see all the private repositories that I do my daily work in. The other is what you see if you're a random person who's not me looking at my GitHub profile. As you can tell from this, about 2/3 of all the coding I do happens in private repositories. This means I have very little time. So, for a couple of years, I kind of dropped the ball on Django registration. Some people forked it, tried to keep it alive. Thankfully, now I'm back with some time and able to do this. But it's a thing that happens. Don't be ashamed of it. It will happen to you. Django registration has grown some new things, which you can read about in the release notes. Activation with HMAC, reserve name validator, disallowing sketchy Unicodes. If you want to hear about sketchy Unicode, come talk to me or Katie McLaughlin. And there will be a future.
Alrighty, so I'm here to talk about how flexibility saves you money and it gets you diversity for less than free. Alrighty, so the old way that things work, the old HR model, if you're thinking about a big company, is that someone's born, then they get educated, then they go and work for 40 years, and then they retire, and then finally they don't live anymore. The thing is that doesn't really work in the modern era because there's things that happen. People have kids, families have needs. Say you might have a parent who needs help and you're a caregiver. So the old model of being born, educating, work, and retiring, it just doesn't really sort of fit the mould. So only a minority of people really can do that. Now, the reason this has diversity implications is this impacts women more than men, but it's impacting men more than it used to. So this affects all of us. And the answer is we need flexible workplaces. And I want to just quickly go through two examples. One is a large Australian bank where the CEO a few years ago said that they were going to have flexibility in every position, and they were going to find flexibility when people thought there was no flexibility. So like some jobs they could work from home, but if you're a bank teller, you can't really work from home. You need to be, you're customer facing. But they went through and say, well, if someone's doing that work, how much are they actually customer facing? How much, like if you've got 10 people that are in the branch, maybe only 2 or 3 are actually customer facing at one point in time. So there is still opportunity for flexibility. And so when they went about doing this, and they rolled this throughout the whole organisation over several years, they found that their metrics on attracting and retaining women significantly increased. Many of their staff that would go off on family leave would find that the progression back to work was far more smooth, and also worked much better when they're having young children, and little simple things like being able to move in a different office so they could pick up their kids from sport started to really come into play. The bank sees it as a key part of their competitive advantage, because other employers are just demanding that you work 9 to 5 or 8 to whatever, or if you're IT, then 7 to 10 p.m. And which unfortunately that's really it's a myth for sustainable productivity. So that's a big example. I'll give a few personal examples from the organisation that I'm involved in. One is we've got one of our people involved is someone who's very skilled. She's got a few kids. She can't work 5 days a week. She doesn't want to work 5 days a week. She certainly doesn't want to work 9 to 5. She's got to pick up the kids from school. Her husband is a teacher, and he can't pick up at a different school, and he can't pick up the kids. And she doesn't want to use after-school childcare. And I'm like, well, that's all fine. We're working collaboratively on our project, and I don't need you to be present at particular times. And she's like, well, that's fantastic. That just fits my needs, exactly what I want. The second example is someone who's also very skilled and got a few university degrees, but she's developed a condition where she can only really work about 8 hours a week. But they're a really productive 8 hours. She's on the disability support pension, she can't get traditional work at all, but she's a very valuable member of our team. So the core message in all of this, if you're involved in a startup or you're in some position where you need to make these kind of hiring decisions, then what are you going to miss out on if you're not flexible in the way that you go about employing people? Thank you.
Alrighty, it would have really sucked if I couldn't gotten the AV to work after the running around I've been doing, but I'm going to talk to you about introspective RESTful APIs with Postgres and Django and how it will make your entire life better, but not really. So WORDS is where I work. That's short for Word and Research Data Services. It's a single source for leading global research databases. So we have a lot of data. We have over 450 institutions worldwide who subscribe to our product. And 50% of that growth has been international over the past 5 years. So the upshot of this is we have 50,000 active users who access these data by web, SSH, remote connects. And we support SSH via the cloud, SAS, R, Python, the web, and more. We have 350 raw terabytes of data and 2 petabytes of total storage that we've gathered since 1992. And we're continuing expansion beyond financial data. When I started, everything ran on a single Sun E20000 before we maxed out the RAM CPU and pegged the CPU at 100% capacity. In 2009, we switched over to a sea of white Linux boxes backed by NetApp. We've used Sun Grid Engine, Oracle Grid Engine, Univa Grid Engine, and LDAP to support that horizontal scalability. Permissions and ACLs are always a big concern for us because our 450 customers each have access to different financial data sets from different vendors. So you can do the math yourself on how many different permutations that is. We also made some very dubious database decisions. Spoiler alert, Postgres has made everything better. All data was stored in SAS data format, in a cryptic format called SAS7B DAT. We had MySQL for website data. We then switched to SQL Server for website data. We then had research data except for the New York Stock Exchange Trades and Quotes database in Oracle. And we still have this problem with permissions. So Postgres to the rescue. There was apprehension by the heads of our division that we were throwing yet another database into the mix while promising, once again, that this would be the one-all, be-all solution, and they were concerned that, yes, we were going to now have Postgres in addition to MySQL, SQL Server, SAS. If you include LDAP, BDB, and rightly so. But all research data was successfully loaded into Postgres. First time we'd ever been able to do that. SQL Server failed miserably. Oracle failed miserably. MySQL, we didn't even try. Postgres Postgres is now backing Django for the website as well. Django and Wagtail are now in our mix instead of Cold Fusion, PHP, and WordPress. We have integration with LDAP and permissions ACLs. And a goal we're still working on is making Postgres the canonical source for all of these ACLs we need to apply to all of our data. We'd promised we'd eliminate at least one of these databases within 6 months, and we've actually done 2. Goodbye Oracle, goodbye MySQL. And we've actually gotten the entire New York Stock Exchange Trades and Quotes databases. That's growing by 1.5 terabytes a month into Postgres. It's a very narrow database, but a very tall database, because you've got to imagine every bid, trade, and quote going across the NYSE. It's a hell of a lot of data. We have shuttered and closed our WordPress satellite site in favor of Wagtail, which if you haven't used it, it's the only CMS I've used in my life that I haven't absolutely hated after a year and actually still love. So I've got to give a shout out to Torchbox because it's absolutely lovely. So we still have some SQL Server around, but that's going to be the next one mostly on the way out, but some of our data vendors have it as a dependency, so it may never go. So foundation complete. Now we wanted to build a RESTful API because we can let people access directly through R, SAS, various other ways. But we never had a way that we could easily build a RESTful API. And we have over 20,000 basic data sets and tables available in Postgres now. So when Words was started in 1992, it was made to dump data to Lotus 123. So brilliant financial faculty around the world could use a tool they knew how to use, Lotus 123 at the time. And in 2017, we created a RESTful API to Anywhere because a Fortune 50 client of ours, most of our clients are business schools, but we've got some corporate clients, really wanted to be able to hit a RESTful endpoint. So we used Django REST framework. We automatically introspected Postgres to create serializers, filters, models, and permissions. Code generated by introspecting Postgres SQL. And we have web browsable endpoints for the user. Filters were created for any columns that were indexed in Postgres SQL automatically. So let's do a quick demo. Okay, we're going through the code there. We've gone through the code. And right here's the code to call the actual endpoint using IBM's QSIP. And right here, we're running against the actual endpoint, and we're going to get every end-of-month data price for IBM since 1925 with the volume and the price. And this is what 20,000 endpoints looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Vic. I'm Vic Yang, and I'm from UC Irvine. It's a very short lightning talk for me. It's my first time, so I'm first attendee here. Well, I'm here because I want to find a job, so I will graduate this month. And they say yesterday I had a picnic with in that place, and thanks for Steve, Chase, Peter, and Tristan. Yeah, like encouraged me to stand here. So I'm looking for a job here. So So why you should hire me? Because I'm self-motivated, I'm willing to learn, I'm good habits of writing code. Most important, I use Django. Yeah, hire me please. And, and lastly, thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to just give a quick talk about keeping bees because it came up at breakfast this morning. I am actually not a beekeeper. My wife is the beekeeper. She's awesome at running an apiary that we have at our house. But because of all of the things that I've learned from her, I thought it would be cool to share some of them with you. So this first picture I've got, all of the photos are from the bees that she keeps. You'll see the kind of classic comb shape. It's not all honeycomb. Some of it is brood comb. And my understanding is it's shaped, they extrude the wax and they stamp it out. And so the shape of that classic hexagon shape is from the shape of their head as they press the wax. If you want to keep bees, you'll need some boxes. So there are brood boxes, and the typical way of keeping bees is that those boxes are filled with frames. So there's usually 10 frames in a box, and the bees will kind of start building out their comb, whether that's brood comb or honeycomb, in those frames. And so that's a photo of some of the boxes and frames that we have. If you want to get those boxes filled with bees, you can actually buy packaged bees. They come in these little boxes you see in the front of the hives there. And I think there's about 10,000 in there, and there's a metal can that has sugar syrup so that they have something to eat in transit. And you just pop the lid off, and then you take the can out, and then you pour the bees into the box. It's the craziest thing, like pouring bees. I've never seen that before. But you just dump the 10,000 bees in there. If you don't have packaged bees, you can collect a swarm. When you see like a bunch of bees out, they're actually really docile at that point, and they all clump together, and you can usually just cut the branch off that they're hanging on, and then you set them on top of an empty box, and they just kind of melt down into the box, and they're like, I'm at home. So it's really fun to watch them do that. This is a photo of some bees that are on the front of the box. That's called the landing board because they fly in, they land right there. And if you look really closely, you can see the pollen baskets that they have like on those back legs. They stuff them full of pollen and they bring it back. The pollen is actually protein, so they eat pollen besides nectar that they'll gather. And so you'll also notice there's that board, there's that kind of like white strip there. There's an entrance reducer that you can put on the hive once you first load them in there. This helps them defend their hive. So normally they have a nice big place on that landing board. They can come and go. But at certain times of year, you put the entrance reducer on there, and it helps them manage their hive. So they keep pests out and stuff like that. This is what a brood frame looks like. So the queen lays eggs into the comb, and then they cap it, and then you have bees that maintain it, and you can actually just lift these frames right out. It's super cool. If you ever have an opportunity to go to an apiary or somebody that keeps bees, ask them to crack the box open and pull a frame out and check it out. It's really neat. A lot of times my wife will use, she has like a beekeeping suit and all that stuff, but sometimes I'll just go out there with her and, you just go use your bare hands. It's usually pretty cool. And one of the interesting things is the bees actually glue these frames in. They have something called propolis. That's like super glue. It's ridiculously strong and hard, and they will glue things together. Like they glue the boxes together, they glue the frames down. And so you'll have like a beekeeping tool. I didn't have a photo of one, but it's this metal kind of like knife-looking thing that beekeepers will use to crack the boxes open and break that propolis. But you can actually scrape the propolis out and then melt it down and then use it to all kinds of different things. So for instance, like if you had like a bad cut on your finger or something, you can use it just like you would super glue. Instead of getting stitches, you can just glue it shut with propolis. It's crazy. It's ridiculously hard, strong stuff. Bees also do something that's interesting called bearding. When it gets hot, they actually gather on the outside of the box, and so they will cover the outside of the hives, and they actually look like they're dripping down like a big beard. This photo kind of shows a bunch on the outside. They're not like dripping. But another interesting fact is they don't fly at night. So in the evening, they all kind of just walk around, and they don't do any flying. And so that's just something I thought was interesting. And the waggle dance, this is also something interesting that bees do. They actually do this, they spin and vibrate, and that kind of tells other bees where flowers and sources of nectar are located. And it's so well known that you can actually set up a camera, watch the bees, and then calculate where those sources of flowers and stuff are at. And you could like fly a drone out there and go look at where the bees are headed. And when they come back from getting the nectar, they produce honey, and then you can extract it out of the frames. And this is what it looks like when you're extracting.
Thank you.